What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. It's a new week, and you know what that means. We have new opportunities here on Bitcoin. So I'm going to get into the overall weekly bias. I'm going to get into the trade that I'm looking for in terms of today. And yeah, before we get into it, just real quick, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Xuan. I've been publicly documenting the success rate of all of these YouTube calls that I've been making. And so far, I'm at about a 75% win rate across the last year and a half. This is across a sample size of like 230 trades. So all this means is that you're probably in the right place because I tend to be right just a tiny bit more compared to when I'm wrong. So with that out of the way though, let's actually get into the video, and we're going to kick things off on the weekly chart because it's always good to start on the higher time frame and then go down into the lower time frames. A lot of people tend to get this wrong, but all of your decisions on a day-to-day basis needs to be based on some sort of a higher time frame move. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. So in terms of the weekly chart, I can see that last week ended up closing bullish. Unfortunately, we ended up going for another week where we did not end up getting that weekly target get hit. And just to give you an idea about how big of an anomaly price action has been, if you take a look at the ATR, this is basically the distance or like the amount of movement between the high and the low of every single weekly candle. And basically this is the average of 14 weeks worth of volatility, which means on average, based on the last 14 weekly candles, we can reasonably expect $6,000 from the top to the bottom of the weekly candle. So if you take a look at last week's candle, we basically went down to 64 and then we came up to 67 basically. So it was half the amount of volatility, right? 3K from top to bottom of the entire weekly candle. And so yeah, it's been a bit weird. And if you've struggled over the last week, that's perfectly normal because as a trader, we make money when there is volatility, right? Because after all, we can go both long and short. So the only thing that's going to prevent us from making money is when there is absolutely zero movement. And last week is a very good example. It's a very objective measure of a week that had very little volatility. And this is something that you can also see quite clearly the moment you go down into the lower time frames, right? Basically, we started here and we ended up here. That's the story of last week. Although overall, the weekly buy still came in helpful in the sense that it ultimately went towards the upside and we did eventually catch a move over there. So with that out of the way though, let me just remove all of these drawings and get into the overall weekly buys. Now, I am going to still say that like nothing has changed. We are still looking for this week to take this level out. Now, whether or not there's going to be enough volatility or not is going to be a completely different story. But at the very least, we know that the draw and liquidity is really clear and we want to trade towards this direction and we want to look for signs and look for just basically signals that will point us towards this direction. If the market ends up dumping from this point onwards, like we're definitely going to have to readdress this. But just because the markets actually dump, it doesn't mean like that's going to be a bad thing because currently this is where the weekly open is at. And anytime we go below the weekly open on a week where we're anticipating some sort of a bullish move, it's actually a positive sign, right? It gives us an opportunity to buy low and then potentially sell high during the weekly expansion. But either way, now that that's out of the way, let me just go down the daily chart to see what is going on. Now, in terms of the daily chart, I can also see that one of the things that stands out to me is the fact that we are very clearly in bullish order flow. So I almost have, way less doubt about this week. I do expect this level to get hit sometime during this week, just based on how bullish the overall kind of daily order flow is. Obviously, the lower time frame order flow is quite bullish as well in terms of the 1 hourly. This is another thing that kind of stands out to me, which is this is known as a strong low, because this low right here is a low that forms after sweeping out this liquidity over here. So this is a strong low, which essentially just means that when you have a strong low, you are anticipating price to respect that low and to not revisit it, right? That's a strong low. Basically, whenever we try to go long on something, we try our absolute best to trade from a strong low instead of a weak low, which does not sweep liquidity. Because ultimately what tends to happen is when you have a weak low, you come sweep it out before you actually make that true expansion. So the fact that we have a strong low on the daily is also a really positive sign. The fact that we have really bullish order flow, the fact that price came back into this order blocks, currently looking like it's respecting it, is also a positive sign. Throughout the weekends, we had a couple of bullish daily candle closes, which means technically today we should be looking for a long. And I think the setup today is going to be pretty straightforward in the sense where the moment we come down into the hourly chart at the same time, we are also dealing with very bullish order flow. So that's a really good sign. And so yeah, coming down into the 1 hourly chart, order flow is already bullish, and this is a new bullish order block that got confirmed a couple of hours before recording this video. And currently it's going to be from 65,400 all the way down to 65,100, which basically just means that we're already in the zone where we can start executing and looking for a trade towards the upside. Now, just to take a look real quick at the amount of news that we have, we can see that today is a non-news day. Tomorrow is also a non-news day, but Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to get rid for the USD news. So chances are those 2 days are going to be like prime trading times for like our system, because if you know anything about our system is that it tends to perform exceptionally well on news days. And to go even further, like to go one level deeper, rather than just looking at the news day, it performs even better when you have high impact red folder news and you're trading in that news session. So if Monday and Tuesday ends up becoming just really choppy, because again, like we can always anticipate the direction based on technical analysis, but at the end of the day, we cannot predict if there will be volatility or not. But what we can say for certain is that on Wednesday and Thursday, it's going to be very likely that we're going to get volatility. So those couple of days is when we want to focus a lot of our attention. But overall though, this Monday, as far as the overall setup looks, it's one of the cleaner Mondays that I've seen, especially one of the cleaner non-news Mondays that I've seen. So we're still going to try to take advantage of this. So essentially the setup for today, if I go down into the 5-minute chart, I can see that currently we're trading above the Asia high. And so yeah, there basically two ways that I expect this to go. First of which is that when you get a bullish CISD, whenever that is, like currently is still looking quite bearish. When you get a bullish CISD, you're already more than welcome to kind of get into it. The problem is that I'm recording this video at the moment at 3:30 a.m. New York, which means this is still a few hours away from the 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. New York kind of window. Depending on what time you watch this video, like when you get a CISD, this is already ready, or chances are the thing that's going to be a lot more applicable for you is by the time you watch this video, you're going to have some sort, like the London kill zone is basically going to close, right? Assume that this is going to be the high of the London and this is going to be the low of the London. You actually want to look for New York to start, right? At 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., you want to look for New York to actually manipulate below whatever the London low is going to be. If you get that manipulation and you get a CISD on the 5-minute chart, that is going to be your entry. Easy as that. So right now, just let things kind of like sweep out, just let things kind of play out in terms of liquidity, and just understand that at the end of the day, you are still trading on a Monday, especially this is a Monday that has no news. And which, by the way, if you are new to the system, one of the things that I've said time and time again is that this system performs exceptionally better when there's news, right? I've said that just now. But the other thing that you don't really know is that, and this is something that I only understand because I have publicly documented my kind of win rate, is that even though I don't really lose that often, the majority of my losses tends to come on a Monday, especially a Monday that has no news. The reason for this is because when you don't have news, it tends to be a lower probability day. Just because the price action is setting up, you're not in the right kind of like timing in order to take advantage of, you know, high quality moves. But the second thing is that on Mondays, it's usually like the opening range of the week. For the same reason why we don't tend to trade Asia as much, and we like to wait for London to kind of show, okay, is it going to be a breakout or is it going to be a manipulation? And then by the time New York comes around, okay, if London manipulates, then New York's going to be distribution. Or if London kind of breaks out, then New York's going to be continuation, right? For the same reason that we utilize the Asia high and low to kind of determine how we're going to trade London and then New York to increase our success rate, the same can be said for Mondays, where this is the opening, like this is essentially the Asia session of the week, where you're just opening up the week, you're still setting up, and by the time Tuesday or Wednesday rolls around, you can clearly see, okay, do you have manipulation or do you have continuation? And then you can take advantage, you know, of the move that comes after. That's a very easy way for you to increase your success rate. And Mondays, unfortunately, if today just does not end up being a trading day, like that's perfectly fine for me. Even Monday is like, it tends to be a extension of the weekends, right? It's very rare that I actually do trade Mondays nowadays, just because I already understand, right? Just because I am spending a lot of time and effort trying to trade a Monday, it's not really the best use of my time nor my capital, because I tend to just end up with a lot of losses. Now, it could be completely different for you, but I'm just sharing, like, since you're watching this channel, I assume you are interested in learning more about this system. Speaking of which though, if you'd like to actually work with me and with our team personally, one-on-one, to learn this exact system so that you can start getting consistent in your trading, feel free to click the first link in the description box below and book a call with Bootcamp. But with that out of the way though, now the last thing that I will mention for this is that there is going to be an invalidation scenario for this entire trade idea, and that is going to be an hourly candle close beneath this level right here at 65,100, because the moment you get a hourly bearish candle body close beneath this level, you are essentially going to confirm this. Well, now first of all, you're going to completely invalidate this bullish order block, and secondly, you're going to close below, which turns this into a bearish order block, which means that our entire thesis that the market's going to be bullish today is now broken the moment you close beneath underneath this level. So if that happens, then yeah, today's just going to become a no trade day, which is kind of what I've already kind of laid out. But anyways, with that out of the way, I'm going to see you guys in tomorrow's video and potentially later on X if I do get into any trades. Ciao, ciao.